Welcome to Talking Film, a series of programs about the movies by the people who make them. I first had the pleasure of meeting John Huston personally when I was in England way back in 1952 and had become a movie extra on the film Moulin Rouge. But I first heard of his name when I was a wee tot back in the 30s and went to see such movies as High Sierra, that's some picture for a wee tot to see, The Amazing Dr. Clitterhouse, and Juarez, because the Huston name was there as the writer of the screenplay. Then I became conscious of his work as a director with the Maltese Falcon in 1940. And when I saw The Treasure of the Sierra Madre in 48, I knew I'd seen one of the 10 greatest American pictures ever made. His name goes on with pictures like The Asphalt Jungle or African Queen, Moby Dick, or more recently, The Man Who Would Be King, or most recently with that eccentric film, Wise Blood. Here now is the star himself, John Huston, in conversation with yours truly, Talking Film. John Huston, it's a great pleasure to have you here in the studio. I'd like to ask you this question. Going over your long and most productive life in cinema, what has been, it's a tough question, I think, the biggest problem you faced as a director? I don't mean one specific film. I mean the biggest recurring kind of problem as a director down through the years, if there has been one.
Well, there have been a series of problems. You always think that the immediate problem is the greatest you ever had.
That's right.
But I suppose in retrospect, looking fondly backwards, with a golden glow all surrounding it, Moby Dick offered the biggest set of problems. It was done during an unholy winter. I suppose it was called the worst winter in English history. In that section of water between Ireland and Fishguard, Wales, the open Atlantic.
Wild.
And rescue boats. These are good-sized motor launches. Went to the bottom, and we were on our way to the bottom 3 times, I thought. We were dismasted 3 times.
Really?
Yes. And once there was no question about it. We were shipwrecked and saved by just masterful seamanship.
You got into the whale once, didn't you? You and a bottle of whiskey, I think you describe it. That must have been a wild ride, because you were towed, weren't you?
The whale was towed, and there would occur every now and then the opportunity for a choice between whether to save the whale or the men in the longboats, and we were disposed humanely to save the men. So, and we'd lose the whale. The cable would be separated, and the whale would be lost at sea in the storm. And these whales were very valuable, but not simply the immediate value of the whale, the fact that we wouldn't be able to shoot when we lost a whale. So it would take weeks to rebuild a whale. We built 2 whales. We lost 2, and it never expecting to, of course. And after we lost the second, why it was pretty desperate. And we had, finally a third was built, and the same situation occurred. And this time I was sure that they wouldn't forsake me, their director, if I got into the whale. They wouldn't let the whale go if I got inside it. So I did. It happened to be New Year's Day or New Year's Eve.
Dear Lord.
And I had a bottle of whiskey, and I saluted the
old out on the New Year.
All the people around in other boats and disappeared into the whale, and they saved the whale. they got it.
John Huston, was this the first time you'd ever worked with Orson Welles? Because he plays the minister at the beginning, doesn't he?
Yes, it was the first time.
How was he as a man to work with? Did he take direction well, or?
Well, I can tell you a little story about that if you'd like to hear it.
Yes, I'd love to hear it.
I sent Orson the script to Paris, and he did some rewriting himself on it and sent it back to me, and he had improved it considerably.
I'm sure.
Yes.
I'm sure.
And so the day came to shoot it. It was a long scene. He had to climb into the pulpit. He was. It was the minister was an ex-sea captain.
Father
Mapple.
Mapple.
And he climbs into the pulpit up a rope ladder, and there discourses to the congregation. And it was a long scene, 6 or 8 pages of solid sermon. And Orson standing in the pulpit, all made up and looking wonderful. He riffled through the pages, and I said, "Should we have a rehearsal?" Orson said, "John, I've never been so nervous." I said, "I don't know what's the matter with me. I've got stage fright." I said, "Could I have a drink? Could I have a drink of brandy?" So I sent out for a bottle of brandy, and Orson put it in the pulpit, had a drink, and put it into the pulpit. And I said, "Well, whenever you're ready, Orson, we'll have a rehearsal." And he said, "Let's just shoot it. Let's try it. Let's run at it.
Yeah.
Let's take a run at it." I said, "All right." And the cameras began to turn over, and we shot the scene. He was letter perfect, comma perfect.
Oh.
And one of the best performances, not only he ever gave, but that I've ever seen. And the scene had been scheduled for, I think, 2 days or 3 days. We finished it that morning.
That's marvelous.
He ran through it perfectly 3 times, which was all we needed.
That's incredible. What a pro, but nervous.
Well, I think there was a little acting in that too. I think he dramatized the moment.
Yeah. He wasn't against doing that, I don't imagine. The Martian invasion, straight up. Was Beat the Devil as much fun to make as it looked on the screen? A very odd and delightful film, I've always found it.
Yes, it wasn't entirely a lark. There was a certain amount of effort went into it. It wasn't as perhaps as easy and as effortless as it might have seemed, but it was a joy to make because all the people were a joy.
There's a story there about Bogart and teeth, isn't there?
Oh yes. We were quite unprepared. The script was in a desperate way, not good, and just circumstances had conspired to put us in a spot. And I'd proposed to Bogey, by the way, that we forget the whole thing. I saw a way to get out of it without it costing anybody any large sum of money, and it was Bogey's company.
Oh.
And I felt responsible because I'd originally introduced the idea of doing this book, and I said, "Bogey, we can get out of this and save our skins." And Bogey said, "John, it's only money." And Bogey was not an easy man with a buck. I mean, he didn't.
No.
He wasn't.
He didn't
all
splurge.
that liberal.
No.
So that put me back on my haunches, my hawks, and we proceeded to make the picture. But on the way down to Ravello, we didn't get there this time, but we were being driven from Rome to Ravello, and we had to go through Naples. It was, the road separated. The left was to Casino. The left was to Casino, and the right was to Naples. And the driver didn't know which way to go, and went right through a stone wall in between the two roads.
An island in the middle.
An island in the middle. That's right. And it was quite an impact. We went right through this 3-foot stone wall, and I looked back. I was prepared for it. Boogie had been asleep in the back seat. I'd seen it coming, and so I had a chance to brace myself. And I looked back, and Boogie was just coming up, like Lazarus. And I said, "How are you, Boogie? Are you all right?" He said, "Christ, no, I'm not all right." All his front teeth had been knocked out.
Oh, Lord.
And not only that, but right in the middle of his tongue, a little trap had been.
Oh, dear.
And as one does under such, terrible, I laughed. I couldn't help but laugh. Bogey swore at me. So that was the way we started Meet the Devil.
What was Truman Capote like to work with?
Oh.
Colorful character?
Well, he's a little bulldog, Truman. He's very determined.
Fine writer.
Very, very, very fine writer. And I remember Truman had an impacted wisdom tooth, became infected, and his whole face blew up. I'd never seen anything like it. And he was carted away to the hospital. And we were writing at the time, and each day we were just staying a little bit ahead of the picture, just a few pages ahead. And that evening, 10 pages came back from Truman from the hospital.
Really?
They'd operated, and he'd come out of the ether.
He was writing
10 pages.
Writing again.
Sent right back. He was a little lion, Truman.
With Jennifer Jones in it, she would of course, married to David O. Selznick then. Did you ever incur any of his legendary memoranda?
Oh, indeed, sure. Anyone that had anything to do with David
got the memos.
Got memos.
There's a trick you played, though. There was a great little practical joke there, wasn't there?
I think you mean he sent me some memos by cable.
Yeah.
And they required complicated, long answers. And I tried answering them for a while, and then got too difficult. So I sent him a cable. David would number the pages of his cables. Be page 1, page 2, page 3. Sometimes it'd be 5 and 6 pages to a
voluminous.
To a Selznick cable. So I sent him back a cable, and page 1, page 2, and then no page 3. Page 4, and I jumped from page 2 to page 4. And then all the cables that I got from David after that, I said, your questions have been answered on page 3.
Well, that's mind you, you're no slouch in practical jokes, Mr. Huston, are you? You've always enjoyed them. Going back, way back, you were born the son of Walter. Back, where were you born? The Midwest, was it, or in the West?
Midwest.
In the Midwest. But as a young man, you took up, I think, painting and sketching, didn't you? And you went to Mexico, and this was always a very big part of your life, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Still today.
Yes. You
still love painting and art. You wrote scenarios, screenplays in the 30s, a lot of the big pictures. I'm thinking of Jezebel and Dr. Ehrlich's Magic Bullet, all for Warner's, I believe, pretty well.
Yes.
And my next question is, what was Jack Warner like to deal with in those days from the standpoint of a writer? This is before you directed Maltese Falcon.
Well, I scarcely knew Jack when I was simply a writer. Writers were several notches below, down on the hierarchy of the quality in a studio.
So it was really after, it was in the days probably...
Yes, although I met Jack as a writer. I met him briefly. Jack certainly ran the studio as no studios are run today.
You don't have that kind of man,
no,
do you?
No. And he was an extraordinary man. The Warner brothers were extraordinary men. We were inclined, or we were at that time, to make a certain amount of fun of those figures, those moguls, and they merited it to some extent. But
your attitude is kindly then more to them today, isn't it? Perhaps, is it?
What is it?
Your attitude is more kindly.
Oh yes,
kindly.
yes. Well, I didn't dislike any of them then, and they always treated me very well. But each one merits all on his own consideration, considerable. I mean, the L.B. Mayers, the Thalbergs, and the Warners and the Cohens and so on. They were a breed, but highly individualized, and they knew what they were about in a way that I don't think, with maybe one or two exceptions, anyone does today.
And some terrific pictures turned out under those tough factory-like conditions, weren't they, back then? What attracted you to the Hammett property, Maltese Falcon, Mr. Huston?
Oh, just that it's one of the masterpieces of American literature.
Yeah.
That's simple as that.
Yeah. Do you have other favorites? I know Moby Dick certainly would be one from having made the film. Do you have any others? Favorites, like would Huckleberry Finn be in there too?
Certainly.
Any other favorite great
Mark
works?
Twain.
Yes.
Mark Twain's, a number of things that Twain wrote. You ever read The Mysterious Stranger?
No. Terrific.
Oh.
Yeah.
Little Red. Dyer.
What do you think of Dreiser, Theodore?
Oh, I'm a great admirer of Dreiser's. Great.
Would you like to direct something, one of his works one day? Would that still be in your vision, or depend on the script, I guess, wouldn't it, and so forth?
Yes, but it would depend on the script, of course. But a very, very fine picture was made of George Stevens.
Place in the Sun.
Place in the Sun, which is a beautiful picture.
I just finished reading his little-known, at least I think it's little-known, Trilogy of Desire, about the thinly disguised account of Charles of Yerkes in Chicago,
yes,
in the street railways.
Well, the Titan is the same.
The Titan, right, and then the Stoic, and so nobody's ever attempted those works, have they?
No.
Maybe one day. You're in the war, Report from the Aleutians, I think was 43, and then the Battle of San Pietro, 44, which we're running on this occasion, and then Let There Be Light. There was a story about the screening, I think you have to tell, in the Battle of San Pietro, and George Marshall played a role in that film, didn't he? I don't mean in the film, but I mean the success of it.
Yes, quite.
Because it was quite a controversy, a product that you made there.
Yes, well, when I came back from Italy and put the film together, it had been made under combat conditions, the Battle of San Pietro, in fact, which was the first battle in Liri Valley to clear the way to Rome, hopefully.
Right.
And it was a very costly engagement. And nothing was done to disguise this. Most films that the military showed at that time were to arouse the enthusiasm of the audience, and this did anything but that, I think. And the first showing, was about as sad an occasion as I've ever witnessed, or been part of. There was a 3-star general who was the highest ranking officer. I forget which one it was, but he was the first to get up and go out
While it's being run.
while it was being run.
And it's not that long a film. It's about
No,
30 minutes.
Well, a little longer than
A little
that,
longer.
but about 45.
45.
And then after him, a 2-star general left.
Oh, dear Lord.
And they left according to rank. A colonel couldn't leave before a general, but finally it got down to lieutenant colonels, and then I was left pretty much alone in the projection room. And by the time I got back to the Signal Corps, the office, I was in the Signal Corps. The calls were already coming in. Nothing was found to the satisfaction of the big brass. And the film was never to be shown. It was supposed to, the idea was that it would be demoralizing to troops, men going into combat. And picture was not going to be shown until George C. Marshall saw it.
Oh, boy.
He was the chief of staff.
Yeah.
And George C. Marshall said that this picture should certainly be shown to every man who might possibly be going into combat, to prepare him for combat.
Wow.
And it was. And everything changed instantly. I was decorated and made a major. And
Oh, my gosh.
so on.
Was it as dangerous to film as it looks? I get
Well, there
scared
was-
watching the footage because
was
one is
an
perilously
element of-
close to the nerve edge. Yeah.
There was an element of danger
Yeah,
to it.
right.
Yes, of course.
Let there be
Done
light.
under fire.
Under fire.
Yeah.
Let There Be Light wasn't released, though, because
No.
you took the shell shock cases. You were to look at that. It was a documentary on what happened to the shell shock victims, wasn't it? Rehabilitation.
Yes, yeah.
But why was it never released, Mr. Huston? Was it too realistic?
Well, I suppose for more or less the same reasons that they originally did
Pietro.
not want to release San Pietro.
Yeah. Love to see it. Have you seen it recently at all, or is it a way back in your life?
Well, no, I saw it a couple of years ago again. I guess the idea is that young American soldier can lose his arms or legs or his life, but his spirit remains undaunted. Well, that's not so, of course. We know better than that now. But there's no dishonor, certainly, to being daunted.
That's right.
And there's a point where most of us, there's a place where most of us can very well be the victims of emotionally of the circumstances of battle. And that's what this picture was about. And I don't think they were prepared to say that at this time.
My list of favorite John Huston films is enormous. It runs the whole gamut of your career. But one of the most favorite of them all is The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. And it was that movie that you made that caused me to spend my life searching for stories by that man, B. Traven. You almost found out who he was. For viewers that don't know, he was a writer that wrote for many years under a pseudonym, and nobody allegedly had ever discovered who the man really was, Mr. Huston. But I think you almost did, in terms of his alleged lawyer who kept bringing notes out to your set when you were shooting. Is this not so?
No, that's not quite right.
The press was perhaps a little askew there.
Yes, no, everyone. There was a man who was sent to me by B. Traven, who brought a letter from B. Traven to me, and most everyone thought that he was B. Traven. And in the years to come, he assumed the role of B. Traven and was known in Mexico City in the society there as Beethoven.
But he really was.
His name was Hal Croves. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I got two letters from him I prize very much.
Oh, have you?
They're written with extreme passion.
Oh, he was a very fine writer.
Yeah. I love his books. Of course, Death and the Death Ship and Bridge of the Jungle to Puente on la Selva.
Lovely book, Bridge of the Jungle.
A suggestion to those of you out there who haven't tasted of Beethoven, ladies and gentlemen, my golly, you've got some great reading ahead. Was there much trouble over the gorgeous way Bogey's character was developing in Sierra Madre, in that very realistic, paranoid way that character did develop? And I'm just wondering if there were problems back at the home front with Warner Brothers at seeing Bogey come off in a way that maybe Bogey's fans wouldn't like to see him come off. Was there any?
No,
not at all. Quite smoothly?
Not at all. This was where Warner Brothers was quite different than MGM, let's say. They didn't necessarily cast their stars into a single mold. They were more pliable than that.
Speaking of MGM, of course, there is that picture, The Red Badge of Courage, I think one of the best war films ever made, that you directed with Audie Murphy and a great supporting cast that was ruthlessly edited by them. What are the statistics on that, Mr. Huston? They cut it down, I think, from a 2-hour picture, at least it was supposed to be, I think, you'd planned, to something like about 80 minutes. Am I right there?
Well, I don't think they cut quite that much out of it, but it was considerably cut. And they cut it. I was present at the first preview of the picture, and I had the disheartening experience seeing the audience rise almost en masse and leave the theater. They didn't want any part of the picture. They didn't like it.
Oh no.
Yes, and so I in a way I sympathize with the MGM. People for trying to salvage something from the film. It was useless. It was hopeless. Them trying to salvage it. They might better have left it as it was originally. It didn't do any good. Nobody wanted to see the picture anyway. Little story about that. In London, some critic saw the picture playing on a double bill out in the boondocks, and called the other critics together, and they saw it in a projection room, and then together demanded that the picture be shown on the West End, be given a West End showing, and MGM had to yield in face of this requirement. And the picture indeed opened on the West End, and nobody came to it.
Oh no!
Again, the same thing happened.
Well, that's a sad story. I still love it. I think it's a beautiful Civil War film.
It's now taken a certain place, and
but there's an irony there. Where one of the MGM executives got onto not too long ago.
That's right.
What was that, Mr. Huston?
And asked me to. I got a cable asking if I had a print of the original picture.
They wanted the missing footage.
They wanted to enter for redistribution.
Boy, life and destiny play queer tricks, don't they?
Don't they now?
What a term.